This is going to be a really short video on how to cut fabric, the width of fabric. So let's say you want to cut a bunch of 2.5-inch strips. And how to do that, I have somebody that was struggling a little bit, and I just want to show you what I do. So I have a 2-yard piece of fabric right here. I know it's kind of boring, it's gray. And the first thing I did was iron it. And a lot of you are not going to like that, but hey, it's going to come out better if you iron it. So you can iron it if you want. If you don't, then, don't iron it. And then you're going to match up the edges right here, and you want it to lay nice and flat all the way up to the fold. So you're not going to match the cut end, so you're going to match this end and make sure it's nice and straight. And that's kind of why you want to iron it, because it has a memory where it's been folded all this time, and you don't want it to necessarily be on that fold because it's not always right. And if you're struggling with a big piece of fabric, like, a 2-yard piece of fabric like this, then, cut it smaller. All right, so I have my fabric all, my camera can't zoom out very much, so I have it all lined up, and it's lined up at the top. And there's something on my cutting table. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the folded side down. Still got stuff on the table. Looks like it's part of my finger now. Hope I didn't break one. Okay. And then I'm going to take my big ruler. Let me see if I can get this in as much as possible. If I had my camera just a little bit higher, it would be nice, huh? All right, here we go. So I have my really big ruler here, and I am going to move the camera this way a little bit so I can move this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this fold on this one of these lines on the ruler and get it nice and straight. And then I'm going to cut a straight line, just like that. Then I'm going to turn it around. And I wish I had a better camera angle. There we go. Let's see. And then I'm going to use my ruler. Now let's say I want 2.5-inch strips, which I do. So I'm going to lay my ruler on the 2.5-inch mark right here, which you can't see because I don't have enough. My camera's not out far enough, but see if I can get it to move just a little bit more. There we go. And then I also want to make sure my line at the bottom here is straight on the fold line. And then I'm going to cut my 2.5-inch strip. And this is where most people have a problem when they cut it. It's not straight in the middle, and it's bowed, or it has, some kind of waviness. But this one's straight, and it's straight because I lined it up with the bottom edge here and made sure that this is laying nice and straight before I cut it, and then it'll come out nice and straight like this. So another thing I want to show you is how to lay it out on your Accuquilt die if you have one of those and you're trying to cut 2.5-inch strips. I have my Accuquilt 2.5 inch strip die right here. And I'm just going to measure from, this is the first cut line, this is the last. They actually have a chart, but I just measure. And it looks like I can cut my fabric to about 8 inches and get it on the die. So, I'm going to find my fabric. Here it is. Got away from me. Now, sometimes if I have a yard of fabric, I'll just send it through the cutter without cutting it. But it's actually much easier to do it this way if you just cut it first. But sometimes I get lazy. All right, so we want to cut it to 8 inches. I'm just going to lay my ruler. And when I lay my ruler down, and you can't see it, I'm going to make sure a line is on the folded edge down here, and then my 8-inch line is on the cut edge, which I know mine's straight. I just cut it a few minutes ago. So, and it's not really that critical for this because you're going to be putting it on the die, but I mean, it's just normal, good practice to cut it like that. Oops. There we go. So this piece is not going to lay on my die and cut all the way to the selvage because it's kind of longer than here's the end of where the die cuts. So I kind of need to cut the selvage off first. So I want it nice and straight. So I'm just going to lay my ruler down and I'm going to line up the line on this edge and cut the selvage off. Well, we don't need it anyway. Then I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to line it up with this bolt line on the edge of the cutter. This is where the line is. And just line it up next to it. Don't line it over the top of that line, but just next to that line. Because sometimes if you get it too far over, then it's not going to cut well. And then just make sure it's laying, the fabric's laying on both sides of where the die cutters are on the edge. And then put your mat down. And so you can lay, another one of these. Oh, looks like I need a new mat. This one's like cut. You could probably even layer 3. I've done that before, but we're just going to do one for this demonstration, and I'm going to go cut it, and I'll be right back. All right, I have my fabric all cut. It already ran it through the die. And I think I'm going to have to order a mat today. So we take the mat off and we're left with this. And sometimes it doesn't cut. But this was what I was talking about. If you get it too close to the top edge, sometimes it doesn't cut it all the way through. You just need to get your scissors and cut that little tiny bit. I just did it a minute ago and it was fine. I think this is the die that gets most of the use, so I'm going to cut this. It's going to happen. And these dies are over 10 years old, I think. So here's my strip, and this is what the middle looks like, and it's perfectly straight. And it's perfectly straight because I took the time to make sure my selvages matched. My fabric was laying nice and flat, and it wasn't wavy at the folded edge. And then I lined it up, my folded edge, perfectly square against the top of the die. Or if you're cutting it, you want it perfectly square with your ruler as you're cutting it, with a line on your ruler as you're cutting it. Whenever a pattern is telling you to cut with a fabric, it means from salvage to salvage, and this is the salvaged edge. So you're going to cut, 2.5-inch strips all the way up from salvage to salvage, and that's what it means.